Could you introduce yourself and your background?
Yes, I'm Ali Mjella, born in 1951, and I'm trained as an economist. I hold a bachelor's degree from the University of Dar es Salaam and a master's degree in economics from the Institute of Social Studies, The Hague, Netherlands.
Thank you. What has been your past work experience in Tanzania?
My work experience, okay, yeah, that's important. Yeah, soon after finishing university, it was a norm that everyone then was to be employed by the government. And so I was employed by the government originally as a building research economist in the Ministry of Lands, building research unit for 6 years. And thereafter, I went to what was then called a parastatal organization, Tanzania Tourist Corporation. It was a state enterprise that was managing hotels and a tour operation company. And I worked there for 12 years up to the mid-1990s. And when the privatization came, the organization was restructured and the hotel properties were divested, were privatized. And since then, okay, I decided to work as a consultant for various organizations, but also as a freelancer.
Thank you very much. And now we are really pleased to have you as expert in the project Pilot4 Research and Dialogue. About this project, Pilot4 Research and Dialogue, what are your hopes and ambitions for the project?
I think the most important thing is that I hope that the project will succeed in creating the confidence and emphasizing on the imperative that the public and the private sector cooperate, particularly in the formulation of policies and the laws that regulate or affect the businesses in the country. This is very important because up to now, for so many years, there had been an atmosphere of suspicion between the public and the private sector. So, and we need to break that barrier so that these two parties come closer. And for while the government is creating the laws and also formulating the policies, but it is in its interest to associate or incorporate the views of the private sector, but because in the final analysis, the policies, the laws of the government should be enabling the private sector and not squeezing the private sector. So obtaining views from the private sector in the course of formulating these laws and policies is very important. And glad that in this project that close collaboration with the government, because the government sits in, and I think we will be able to so say, emphasize or put forward or emphasize that imperative.
Yes, and as part of the project, we also plan to have some consultation event with civil society. Do you think that it's important also to have this dialogue with the, let's say, the public organization, the private, but also with the civil society organizations?
Yes, it's important. It's important because in the final analysis, if economic policies should ultimately end into the helping or building the welfare of the people, the population. And if we focus so much on economics, on mainly benefiting businesses, then we may overlook some of the important issues that affect the welfare of the population. And so the civil society organizations have a role to put a certain moderation on policies that benefit the businesses, but could harm the general society as a whole.
Thank you. And that links to my last question. I mean, what is the role of dialogue in the current context? And do you think it's important to have this dialogue?
Absolutely, it's important because both and when first when we talk about the dialogue in this context, I presume it's the public and private dialogue. And yes, I agree. It is important to continue to have that dialogue because both sides of the equation think that there are issues to work on, particularly on improving the business environment. The government, as a case in point, has been coming up with different reform formulations. The latest, for instance, the blueprint, so that underlines that there are issues to be resolved in order that the businesses could operate more efficiently and effectively. And on the part of the private sector, yes, they feel that the current business environment is not that enabling enough. There are issues to be sorted out so that the businesses could work more efficiently and be beneficial both to the businesses themselves and for the government in terms of collecting more taxes.
Yes, thank you. It links actually to what we said during the conference, the panel of experts this morning, that this business environment could also be beneficial for creating employment opportunities for young people.
Exactly, exactly, yes.
So this makes also the project interesting in the way that to create this dialogue between the government and the private sector in these regards.
Yes, I think it's very important for you, probably being outsiders, you are not well informed or can't understand how some years ago the two sides have been far apart. The government used to think that, okay, it is a full mandate to formulate policies and introduce laws that regulate businesses without consultation with the business sector. It feels that it is a right to do that. It has been mandated to work on that. But it's wrong, of course, because without the inputs of the private sector, always there will be some flaws, there will be imperfections in those laws, and then the businesses will be performing suboptimally, or that you will, the government will not succeed to so to say, to invite as many investment as possible, and that is, and therefore underutilizing, so to say, the exploitation of the country resources. And the government depends on a healthy private sector in order to collect enough taxes, tax revenues to run the government, given that, okay, its role to be, so to say, an investor and a provider of jobs has waned or has ceased since the early 90s.
Yes, and that's exactly also the topic of your chapter for the book or the handbook. So we thank you very much for this and for this interview.
Yes.
And for your,
we'll be glad to share some things.
Yes. No, perfect. Thank you very much. I think we'll be. It was a good interview. Thank you very much.